Now, it is a big week for the tech sector as investors await the initial public offering of Zynga. The largest maker of games on Facebook plans to offer as much as $1 billion of stock on Thursday. Well, the maker of Mafia Wars and Farmville is not the only one with IPO plans. Facebook is also weighing listing sometime next year in a deal that would value the social networking site for $100 billion. But are investors right to be excited about these companies? Groupon, the daily deal site, went public early this month, and its stock is down by more than 14%. Meanwhile, LinkedIn, another social networking site, also listed in May. Shares have lost a quarter of their value since then. Well, does that say anything about these tech companies' fundamentals? I'm glad to say I'm joined by three major social media players. Sonali de Riker is a partner at Acel Partners, and she has been active in the European venture business for 12 years, focusing on investment in the consumer internet and digital media sectors. Acel Partners was the first institutional investor in Facebook and an early investor in Groupon. Well, Ian Hogarth is co-founder and chief executive of Songkick. It's a system that searches through the music that a person listens to and then suggests upcoming concerts that are playing nearby. And James Caan is the entrepreneur and the chief executive of Hamilton Bradshaw, a private equity firm. He's also on the panel of the TV show Dragon's Den, in which entrepreneurs pitch their business ideas to millionaires willing to invest their own cash. Thank you all very much indeed for being with us. James, if I can start by asking you about these IPOs. They obviously generate a lot of interest, and certainly the Facebook 100 billion figure, which has been around for a while, has generated a lot of interest. But is it possible to say whether or not they're being overhyped?
I mean, I suppose the key issue is where you've got Facebook with nearly 800 million people on Facebook today, and just the sheer potential of how you can monetize such a large community. And I suppose the investors looking at the comparison between a Google and Facebook, who really are now converging in terms of trying to attract that advertiser. So I think, you know, at the end of the day, the Google share price has gone up significantly since the launch. It's had a massive following and it's performed very well. So clearly, I think investors are looking at that as a comparison. I mean, I would imagine Facebook at 100 billion must be the largest single IPO ever come to the market in global history, that a company coming on with that valuation. But it clearly demonstrates that is what the market's appetite is at the moment for that sort of opportunity.
Sonali, your company has been one of the early investors in a number of these companies. What do you look for? How can investors make sure they're not just kind of tagging on the back of a social media bubble and they're actually looking at the fundamentals of the right companies?
Well, we think that the secular tailwinds behind social media usage are just vastly more dominant than the macroeconomic environment at the minute. About 20% of online time is actually social time, which is just massive. I think that's more than double the next category, which is games. And so that's fundamentally changing how people consume the internet, and it's fundamentally changing how people make purchase decisions, what they buy, what they view, what they read. And any business that we're looking at is either at the center of that sort of new ecosystem or is building new businesses on the back of platforms that have already been built.
Ian, you are one of these new businesses. Tell me, how is your business growing, and do you look to other platforms as well? I know that you're working in partnership with Spotify at the moment. How does all that work?
Sure. Well, I guess our business has changed quite a lot over the last few years as more and more of these platforms have emerged. So in the past, you really built for the web, and your primary distribution mechanic was Google. And in that time, many more platforms have emerged. I mean, the Facebook platform is the obvious one, but in addition to that, you've got iOS and Android as two substantial new platforms for web developers to build on top of. And as Songkick, we really think about being a cross-platform company now. We have a website, which is the second most trafficked concert site in the world after Ticketmaster. We have the fastest growing app on iOS, iPhones, which had 100,000 downloads in the first 10 days. And about now, we're launching on Spotify, which is hopefully going to be one of the biggest still.
It does seem like clusters like Tech City are actually allowing people to sort of share and brainstorm and share ideas. How important is that?
I think it's vital. I spend about a third of my time in the US and most of that time in Silicon Valley, and the kind of insight you get from spending an hour with the Facebook CTO or with an early investor in Groupon or a VC who's looking at the latest trends in offline-online intersection is just incredibly valuable. And I think now there are more credible companies coming out of the UK. It's fantastic to sit down and talk with local entrepreneurs who are way ahead of where we want to be in the path.
James, when we look at entrepreneurs like Ian and others in the UK, we've got a situation here where there is a lot of youth unemployment. Is there a mismatch between some young people's skills and the job opportunities that are clearly here in such a vast, an area with such vast potential?
I mean, I think the employment angle is a very important angle because right now in the UK we've just announced 1 billion unemployed young people from the age of 16 to 24, which is the worst it's ever been. But I think a lot of people, young people, don't realise that a natural career for them is within the digital media and marketing space. We've just recently invested in a company called Gemini Search, which is really looking to tackle this issue, where matching these young people to employers, because if you look at, we're picking up jobs at the moment, for example, for a social media manager for £90,000 salary, or a social media analyst, which will be earning more like £50,000. So we're seeing that the market for jobs in this space is growing at the rate of 100% a year. Even if you look at East London, 3 years ago, there were 200 tech companies. In 3 years, it's gone to 600. So I think there is an explosion in jobs in the digital media marketing space. The key is young people are not aware of it.
And are they trained for it? Do they need to be trained for it? What should they be doing at school to fit them for these jobs?
Well, I think one of the things that I find fascinating is some of the jobs that we're working on at the moment. These jobs didn't exist a year ago. And if you look at the impact of education, the education system is not preparing our young people for the modern economy. The modern economy is very different to where education is. So I definitely think there is a mismatch, because when you look at all jobs at the moment in this space, they're typically by younger people. The question is, are we training them well enough? But also, the last thing we can afford to do as an economy is lose these valuable jobs, to overseas providers or international markets, because Britain needs to keep those jobs in-house today.
Sonali, this area is just growing so quickly that it's almost difficult, if you're not within it, to see the potential. I mean, we're talking about areas, jobs that didn't exist, and indeed Facebook and Twitter that didn't exist. Is there another platform that's as big as those that's yet to be invented?
So, we've talked about social and the fact that even in the worst economic circumstances, Groupon and Zynga were created. Both hatched around 2008, and you know the Zynga numbers, and collectively the industry of local deals and social gaming will be about 4 billion this year. This is from a standing start, and that's Facebook. As Ian mentioned, we're very excited about mobile. That's just a big wave coming online. 700 million smartphones will go to 2 billion. Apple, the Apple App Store did not exist in 2008, and this year I think it'll do between 7 to 8 to 9 billion. That's just two of the ecosystems. We think Amazon is building a platform business, of which you know about the Amazon marketplace, but there's a lot of innovation. We have never seen such unprecedented innovation from incumbents ever in the tech history before.
And you talk about Facebook being like the new high street. Explain how that works.
So the way to think about it is that you have a few companies, Facebook being one of them, Apple being another, Amazon, Google to some extent, who are building essentially the internet highway. And people are just setting up shop because the highway has the infrastructure. You're building on the back of their servers. It has the audience, it has the users, it has the payment systems to some extent. It's still early days, but the payment systems are there. It has the developer community. It has people like Songkick who are actually building world-class applications, and all they need to focus on is building a phenomenal consumer experience. And that's great for us because we can back companies who don't have to deal with all the headaches of the back end and the front end, but essentially just are bringing a transparent, great consumer experience. And we think that this is going to disrupt offline. So only 9% of retail spending is actually gone online, but about 30 to 40% is being influenced by what people are doing online. And we think mobile is at the heart of that, and that is going to impact offline sales dramatically. I think 1 in every 3 mobile purchases is actually done while in a store. So what are people doing? They're actually checking for price transparency. That's taking transparency and consumer advocacy to the next level. And this is going to create a whole bunch of companies that you haven't yet anticipated.
Is it difficult to see how much potential you've got out there? I mean, where do you think with Songkick you are on this, whereabouts on the line are you in terms of how far can you go with it?
I think we're just getting started. We're the second largest concert site with millions of users, and we've got a level of scale now where we have some leverage and some ability to really transform the industry that we kind of are a part of, the live music industry. But by the end of next year, I'd love to be the largest live music site in the world and have tens of millions of users and the leverage and opportunities for innovation that brings with you.
James, I just want to ask you about, from an investment point of view, it seems that there's a huge amount of potential out there, but how do you pick the right company to invest in? I mean, presumably there are businesses that fail. It can't, you can't have a scattergun approach. What do you look for?
I mean, there's clearly a very high failure rate in this space. There are literally thousands of businesses that are being presented on a daily basis for investment. I think the issue for me has always been you've got to back somebody that you really believe in. In the technology field, the passion, the drive, the determination of the individual is absolutely critical. At the same time, you need to understand that is the proposition a commercially viable one? What a lot of entrepreneurs who come to me, great idea, but they haven't really crystallized the business model. How will this actually make money? What have you done to research the market? Because yes, it's very exciting, yes, there's great opportunities, but it is a very crowded space. There are thousands of businesses literally looking to launch. In Britain today, we're registering nearly 500,000 new businesses a year. That just goes to show you what the competition of capital is. So people need to research their market, make sure it's commercially viable, demonstrate their ability to make this work. But I suppose for me, the key is, can you convert the idea into execution? Can you actually deliver what you say and demonstrate proof of concept? The minute you can start to generate revenue, all of a sudden you may have the next blockbuster on your hands.
Fantastic. Okay, well, James Caan, thank you very much indeed
Pleasure.
for joining us from Hamilton Bradshaw, and so now